Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Flynn and I am the owner and maker of Flynn Sisters Boutique. And today we have kind of a different video. My friend Joe challenged all of his group members in the group Creative Tumblers for Everyone to take a cup out of their strip pile and revive it somehow, bring it back to life and finish it out into something beautiful. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do today. This is a cup I started weeks ago and I had planned on filming this for a tutorial and I just did not like how it turned out, and it's definitely in the strip pile. So hopefully I could turn it into something beautiful for Joe's challenge. You guys are going to see all the products in this video listed and linked down below in the description box. You might even find some discount codes for you there as well. So that's enough chit chat for me. Let's go ahead and get started. You guys, so I started this cup with like a pretty basic glitter swirl. I had a few different colors of glitters, which I will link down below in the description box. And I was trying to get a really pretty white opal-y base. You'll see in the inspiration photo here that they had like different shades of purples and violets over glitter. And so that's what I was trying to start with here. I'm working with a 20-ounce traditional stainless steel tumbler from Craft Haven, and I've already sanded to prep it and I base painted it white. I'm using my fast setting epoxy for adhesive for my glitters, and I actually applied just a little bit more epoxy than I normally would for epoxy method glitter because I'm using so much glitter and I really want to pack it on there. So I mixed up 5 milliliters of fast set epoxy and I used just about all of that for this. Once I was done with my glitter, I removed my tape off at the bottom. If you're not taping off your bottom, you can disregard that step. And I let it sit on my rack to dry for about an hour and a half before I applied my first coat of epoxy. I did not seal my glitter before I applied my epoxy. I didn't really feel like I needed to because I'm using all one color, and it's okay if some of that glitter shifts around a bit. I'm using 30 milliliters of my Artist Cure Formula epoxy for this first coat, and after I apply it, I'm going to remove my tape down at the bottom and I'm going to let this sit for about 6 to 8 hours on my turner before we move on to the next step. In our second coat of epoxy, we're going to be applying some colorants. I've mixed 60 milliliters of epoxy. We're using my Artist Cure formula this time because it has a longer working time than my Fast Cure. I've applied about 20 milliliters of epoxy to my cup already and hit it with my torch to pop any bubbles. And while it was leveling out, I divided the remainder of our epoxy into 5 different medicine cups. One of them I colored with Alumilite's black epoxy dye, just 1 drop. The other one, I put a few drops of purple alcohol ink in it and mixed it in. I did the same with kind of a lighter shade of purple alcohol ink. I mixed it into the epoxy. I also took a purple glitter mix and mixed that into one of them. And then I also have some white epoxy dye in the 5th medicine cup. And I'm just finger painting it onto my cup, and here is where I went wrong. I applied way too much of the black and my alcohol inks lightened up way too much in my epoxy. So there was, what I feel, way too much contrast between that black line and our purple sections of our design. If I could turn back time, I would have not finger painted on the black epoxy dye and I would have just drizzled that in very lightly more towards the end, and I would not have applied any heat to it. I realized going into this design that this is a lot like one of my alcohol swirl tutorials I did a while back, which I will link down below. This is kind of an altered version of that tutorial, and I almost like it better as far as the alcohol ink application goes because I had more control. I took a silicone brush and dipped it directly into just alcohol ink only and painted that into the wet epoxy. And that's what allowed me to get so many beautiful blooms of color around the colorants that we put in with the epoxy. I love how it moved, and I love the contrast of applying the ink this way versus applying the ink mixed into epoxy as well. And that ink mixed into the epoxy was kind of our roadmap or rough draft, I guess, of where I was going to also place just the ink only with the silicone brush like you see me doing here. I also drizzled in some of that glitter that we had mixed into the epoxy earlier as well, also using the tip of a silicone brush. And overall, this was a very fun design to create. I love the technique and I thought it was beautiful. That black just overtook way too much. And that's what I didn't like about this design and why it ended up in my strip pile. Here's what it was looking like after I tried to save it. I was done messing around with it. At this point, I was just very disappointed. It was not what I had envisioned at all, or anything like my inspiration photo. So then I saw Joe's post about reviving these cups that we have in our strip pile. So I had an idea for this one. I thought, let's try and cover up that big black section with some different kind of colorants. So I'm going to give my cup a quick rim job like I normally do with my sanding routine. So we're going to sand down to expose a fine line of stainless steel. This fine line of stainless steel is where our final coats of epoxy will adhere to create the final seal for our tumbler on the outer rim, rather than the very top rim where it's more vulnerable. Once I'm done with my sanding, I'm going to clean it up with some rubbing alcohol and paper towels. But I do warn you that if you are going to be sanding before you do your hydro dipping with the technique we're using, you may want to consider putting on a very light coat of epoxy first before moving into the hydro dipping, because when we go through the removal process with the paint, if we have a lot of sanded sections below, the paint gets stuck in those sanded sections and will stain, and you won't be able to remove it later on. So just be aware of that. That's why you see me only sanding around the rim, because it's not as much of an issue around the rim, and you're going to see why later on. All right, so now we're going to move on to our hydro dipping with our spray paint. I will list the paint colors that I used in the description box. And I've got a 5-gallon bucket almost full of room temp water. I think the water temperature and your room temperature is very important. Obviously, you want to do this in a well-ventilated area. And if it's too hot, your paint is going to like curdle or dry really quick. And if it's too cold, it's not going to kind of marble very well. So that's why I like to use room temp, and I spray all my colors in a clover configuration. So think of a 4-leaf clover when you're spraying all your colors. I spray all the colors at least once, and then when I go to dip my cup in, I come straight down and I rotate my cup in the direction of the swirl. If I'm covering a swirl like we're doing here, we'll dip it in the direction of the swirl so that the paint from our hydro dip is in the same direction and orientation as our colorant swirl from what we did earlier. As soon as that paint dries, which it does pretty quick, I kind of tap all the excess water off with a paper towel, and then I go in with some acetone and a paper towel and remove any sections from the hydro dip that I don't like. You can also use 91% rubbing alcohol for this process as well. It's just going to take a little longer, but you will get a different effect in that you can go into different saturations of paint removal, I guess, if that makes sense. If you've done this before, you know what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm just removing some parts that look maybe a little cloudy or not so great, and expose colors from the design underneath that I want to shine through. Next, we're going to apply more colorants and more glitter over the hydro dip. Obviously, I could have ended it here, but I really wanted to gild the lily with this one. And I also wanted to make the hydro dip look more integrated with the design underneath. So I've got 30 milliliters of epoxy here. I'm applying about 20 of it directly onto my cup, and the remainder I put into a medicine cup, and I mixed in some mica pigments that I got from Cal and Grace Designs. I will link this one down below in the description box. I only put about a pea-sized amount in there. And I just kind of drizzled that into the cup again in the same direction as our swirl. Not going too heavy-handed, just a little bit here and there. And I love how the pink in this mica color picks up the pink underneath. Next, I hit that with my torch just to pop any bubbles and to help those mica lines kind of hatch out and blend in and level. And then I'm going to sprinkle in some star glitter that I found from one of my child's slime kits. I just really liked the shade of this purple for these stars. I don't know where you would find them. You could probably find them on Amazon or Etsy, or I don't know if you guys know a glitter supplier that has these same stars. Link them down below in the description box for us, please. Then I'm going to take saffron from Diamond Luxe Glitters. I'm going to hand sprinkle that in as well, just sort of here and there wherever I feel like needs a little accent of sparkle. All right, and I let this dry for about 6 to 8 hours before I came back and applied another coat of epoxy over that. This time I did use about 20 milliliters of my Fast Cure epoxy. All right, now our cup is mostly smooth. I did do a little additional sanding to knock down any kind of pokey bits. And now I'm going to apply the name decal. I have a whole tutorial on how to create name decals just like this. So if you guys struggle with getting those monkey tails at the beginning and ends of your fonts for your names like this, I created a whole video showing you exactly how, and I will link that down below in the description box. I'm using a beautiful silver holographic vinyl today that I got from Tech Wrap Craft. I can never say their name right. I got it on Amazon. I will link that in the description box too. And I sized it to about 8 inches long so that it goes the span of my cup and my swirl. And I love how it looks like it's part of the design. Look at that. All right, now it's just time for final coats. And that's it. You'll notice I didn't epoxy the very bottom of my tumbler. You may have seen throughout the tutorial where I was applying and removing tape to the bottom. I have a whole video on how to finish your cups if you don't want to epoxy the bottoms. And I just wipe off any additional epoxy here towards the end, if any gets on the bottom, with some rubbing alcohol and paper towel. And that's all I really do to finish off the bottom like this with a tumbler like this style and shape. So that's it for this tutorial, and let's just recap here. So here's my inspiration photo. This is what I wanted to create. Here's how it turned out on the first go round, and here's how it turned out after we reworked it. I reimagined the design, and I think it turned out pretty cool. It's nothing like the inspiration photo, but at least it's not getting stripped, and it's a beautiful cup that I could send to one of my FSX members, and I think she's just gonna love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I hope you loved it, and I'll see you again soon. And a big thank you to all of our Flynn Sisters exclusive members. Thank you for your pledge. Your support means the world to our channel. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.